how's it going?
Excellently. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Right,
Fantastic.
let's get stuck in. So, whilst I was preparing for this interview and looking you up on the internet and stuff, the main thing that really stood out for me about you was just this immense positivity and optimism. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. And sort of how important that's been to you in achieving your goals, and how other people who maybe don't have that at the moment could go about achieving that mindset. Okay?
That's fantastic. Let's get into it.
So, would you say, I mean, first of all, am I right? Are you a sort of optimistic, positive, glass half full sort of a person?
Yeah. I sometimes say three-quarters full.
Wow, that is that is
Yeah.
good.
I always say, what's the alternative? Pessimism. I mean, just look at the words, and I find that it's so unhealthy to focus your energy on what could happen rather than what's happening right now.
Yeah, right now. And would you say that you've have you always been that way? Do you remember, or was there a shift at any point in your life, or have you just always been this bubbly, happy, positive person?
I don't think there's any extreme shift. I mean, I think that in life, some of us are on roller coasters, some of us are on the L train, as it would be in Chicago, just level, flat there. So there's lots of dynamics. So for me, I think that mostly I've been optimistic. If I've ever found myself in any kind of, it would be self-doubt or anything I just go, wait a minute, who am I kidding? That's not a problem. Let it go. Don't be so heavy on yourself.
Okay. And how did you? Because that's actually quite a difficult thing to do, isn't it? I mean, how did you? Is that something that you've learned to get better at over time? Because I find that ability to recognize when you're sort of in a negative cycle and thinking that way, it's not always easy to recognize it and then snap out of it.
Yeah, that's true. My best indicator of my own, level of optimism or not is, two things: productivity and just am I closing in? Am I resisting the resisting the need? I have to answer emails or I have to return these phone calls. So if I find myself, I'm just in the mode where I'm putting that stuff off, procrastinating some things I need to do, I realize, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? So that gives me a reality check.
I think one of the things that I've really noticed, or that's become increasingly obvious to me, is that the fundamental difference between the people who are out there achieving the things that they want in life and realizing their dreams and going after things, and the people who are sort of stuck, is just this absolute belief, like this gut belief that they can do anything. And they believe it so profoundly that there's no doubt or question in their mind. Do you have, I don't know if you will, but do you have any sort of advice for people on how to go about getting that sort of self-belief? Because for me, it's been a journey,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, because, I've come from a place where I was sort of, I didn't believe at all that I could do anything. And now I feel like it's just living inside me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for people on how they can sort of go about achieving that self-confidence and self-belief so that they can just go out and do what they need to do?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I would recommend. I mean, the first thing, I think what holds somebody back from either recognizing the potential within them to do whatever it is that they want to achieve that is typically fear. I mean, it really does come down to fear. And when you're afraid, try to drill down, what does fear stem from? And fear stems from change. A lot of times there's some kind of, or afraid to change. Or why do we tend to fall, some people who will fall into the doldrums, if you will, and that's because something's changed in their life. So change becomes something that we're afraid of. So if somebody, I was just talking to a woman the other night, and she had quit her job, and because she really always wanted to basically make her own spices, mix
Wow.
spices and
Yeah.
things for cooking. And she's now embarked on this journey where she's discovering, interesting spices from Morocco, from India, and putting them together and building her own little online business that could help aspiring chefs or people who want to explore, the spicy world, if you will. And she says, I don't know why I didn't do this 5 years ago. And it's because she was afraid she wasn't going to be able to pay the bills, which these are all real things that we can be afraid of.
Sure.
But once I think, and this is the advice that I usually give people, change is something that's the only thing that's steady in our lives. So accept it and do things on a regular basis that bring change into your life so that when it does hit you maybe a little bit blindsided, you can do that. And I say things like, people that typically go to work, if they're riding their bicycle or in their car, taking the train or the tube or whatever, and they're doing that same route every day. They go past the same stores, they probably see the same faces. So that becomes this kind of monotony, and it becomes a rhythm, a drone rhythm that is fine because you just go and you after a while you get desensitized. You don't even notice those people, those faces. So I say take a different route to work and start recognizing and looking at things that are different around you.
Yeah.
And being curious is the other thing I always say is, wow, ask questions and address people. So, and also like in your home, maybe move your furniture around. I mean, play with it. Change something. When you go, don't go to the same restaurant. Don't cook the same meal. Try something. So after you get into this routine of change, you're looking, I think, for things to change. And I believe that your mindset's like, wow, I changed the route to work. I'm seeing things I've never seen before. You're being you're being enlightened and you're being energized.
Yeah, and you start to enjoy it, and then you start to, like you say, you start to go out and look for that. Then instead of thinking, "Oh, change what? I don't want that." You're like excited by it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and sure, something could hit you. You could, trip and break your hand, something like that, and that's certainly kind of changed. But now you're like, okay, let's look at, as I'm famous for saying, is turning our obstacles into opportunities or problems into opportunities. It's just how you look at them. Mm-hmm. And the second thing, beyond that change and changing your perspective too, is being able to trust, and that is to trust your intuition and your gut, and to trust others, because that relates a little to fear. We're always afraid. We close ourselves up, so therefore we desensitize ourselves, and we also don't. We may say, I really think I could sell spices. No, I could never do that, and I don't trust I could do it. So I think if you start learning to trust yourself, and you take that same approach, and you just do things, follow your instinct. Our gut really is right, and you know that.
It's strong. It's strong, isn't it? But then you immediately, like you say, there's this other little voice that's trying to like squash it back down so that you don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And just one last bit of advice. I think a lot of times people fear, like are afraid. Okay, if I do change, let's just say we're talking about a drastic career change, and making it. I really want to do this. I want to write my book, or I want to explore the world, or I want to help impoverished kids in Mexico. These things, whatever it is inside you that you really want to do, and for whatever reason you haven't stepped forward and believed in yourself to go forward. And I think that you need to recognize that, you need to write that down, and you need to visualize that as best as you can, and share that with those people that are supportive. And if you find people are dragging you down and telling you no, you can't do that because you need to be able to pay your mortgage, you need to kind of move away and create space between those people, because that negativity. And the other thing is, we don't need a lot. I learned this because I traveled all over the world on a motorcycle, and I went into the most impoverished, crazy places in the world, and I realized that those people that seem to have so little than what we think, are the most happy. Yeah. So I was talking to another friend, and he said he's buying this home, and it's like 40 miles from the ocean, where he kind of really loves to be, close to the ocean. And I said, why are you going out there? And, the little town, I said, I can't believe that's so far. You don't know anybody out there? Well, what is it? Well, I can get a much bigger house for the money. And I said to him, I said, think what you just said. bigger house. Now, do you need a bigger house? I mean, what is it you need? So you have to ask yourself, what is it you really need? Does that really make you happy? It seems like it's more to clean. Then you have to pay more money to get more furniture. And I think that, the old adage is less is more.
Yeah.
And it really is. I said, why don't you get a little place here and have much more fun with it and get comfortable? Because I know that's what he really wanted to do.
Yeah.
He didn't want to live out there. He's just thinking of himself, because the amount of money I have, I need to be.
Yeah, you should be living that sort of life. And it's like we're constantly striving after all of these things, and then you get there and it's like, oh, well, actually I don't feel any different. What now? I mean, it's just complete craziness.
It's absurdity, yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah,
so you mentioned your round the world motorcycling tour, and I couldn't get through an interview without asking you about that, especially requested from my brother as well. So he's into motorcycling. During your trip, you had quite a major accident and crushed your leg, didn't you? And crashed your bike. During those moments, it must have been quite difficult. What was it then that made you think, that stopped you from giving up, that sort of said, I can rather than I can't? I mean, it must have been pretty tough then, no?
Oh, it certainly was, because I had to, it took a long time. It was in the middle of nowhere in the Altiplano of Bolivia. I slipped on some mud, and, I fell, and my motorcycle fell on top of me, crushed my leg, broke it in several places. No telephones, nothing. I eventually made my way in about 4 days back to the United States. My motorcycle stayed in Bolivia, and I had a surgeon operate on me, put all kinds of hardware in. I call it, I got Home Depot in my leg, because there's lots of screws and things. And but I walk fine, it's fine. But what happened is two things I thought that really hit me. As once I was lying in the hospital, I was coordinating with a gentleman to get my motorcycle, because it was in the motor. I'm trying to find somebody who could get the motorcycle. Everyone's like, oh, they're gonna steal it. You'll never get your motorcycle back. That was always a big response. So anyway, I coordinated that back, and then and in that conversation, the gentleman who was doing it well, he says, oh, you broke your leg, and he said to me, it's a Bolivian man, since it looks like you're probably not going to continue your journey, I'd like to buy your motorcycle. And I said, wow. And then my friends, Lee, they would say, oh, really, Allan, I'm so sorry about the leg and everything. I was on crutches. Like, oh, and the end of your trip, because I was only 6 months into a trip that eventually turned into 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And they said, what are you going to do now? And it's at that moment I realized that there's nothing else I could do but continue. And the fact that my friends had doubt that I could continue gave me more energy to say, you know what? There's no way. I mean, even though the odds at this point, it's very tough to get back there. Will that motorcycle be there? And, I'm going to have this recovery period. And plus, because where the motorcycle was, there's weather issues. And I could not go back there in the midst of the rain season, because that's all I would be in for mud for months, at least just to get out of Bolivia. And I convinced my friends, you know what? I am going forward. And people were taking bets, Lee, that I wouldn't go.
What?
And that I would, yeah. Yeah. I have very good friends. They said, how much you want to bet? I was going to get too comfortable. I don't want to go, because remember, riding around on a motorbike, yes, it's all glamour and fun. You think about it, but it's a struggle. Every day you have to find a new place to sleep and eat. You're always having to make decisions. And you're always having to negotiate with maybe corrupt people or, people with questionable motives, and it can be tiring. But you know what? There's nothing more thrilling to me than doing that. So I did that. And the very first day I was back, not the first day I landed there, but the first day I got back on that motorcycle, I got to a river. And the river was no bridge. And it was filled with all these sharp rocks, and there's only one way to the other side. And there's also this black, dark mud, and I was afraid. I stood there at the edge of that. And there's a photo, because I actually rode with another gentleman for the first few days when I got back, and I looked out across this chasm, this long. It was about 300 yards of mud, and it's not very deep. So and this motorcycle I have is a high clearance, so you can ride right through it. And I wanted to turn around. I was like, let me get the map out. There's got to be another way around, because I was afraid. It's mud, it's water. I just had this bout of, well, I'd gone through all the physical therapy that made my muscles strong. My confidence was nothing. And I, looked at this guy and says, will you ride my motorcycle across? And he looked at me and he says, you're out of your mind. And I said, yeah, you're right. I'm out of my mind. So I got on that motorcycle and I rode across the river. And right before I was getting out of the river, my rear wheel started spinning and the bike spun out in front of me and I crashed.
Oh, no.
Now, I did not break my leg that time. The bike got a little tweaked here. And I will tell you this, that I was so pissed. But yet it was probably the best thing to happen to me, because once again, I got that bike, lifted it up, put the bags back on, and I continued that journey.
You almost needed that to happen, really, because otherwise it would have just something further down the line. It would have just been.
It would have been a bridge. It would have been this. It would have been something. Yeah. So anyway.
Did you find that all of the things that you saw and the people that you met along the way, did it reinforce your sort of positive view of the world, or did you see things that sort of made you think, oh, it's all a bit of a mess? And, what are we doing here? And I can't believe this. And did it sort of like bring you down at times, or?
There's no question that you're faced with, and being an overall optimist also doesn't mean you can be blind to certain realities. We do need to be aware, because we need to have that, empathy, that compassion for people and even for ourselves, I think. But I truly believe this, Lee, that if you set out on anything you do, and for me on that travel around the world, that if I was looking for the negative, what's wrong with our world, I would find what's wrong with our world. But if you set out, and as I did, you set out and look for what's right or what's beautiful about our world, you will see that and you will find that. And that, to me, is the most important thing. It comes back to perspective that we were talking before. So I was faced, I will tell you that the faces of children, the innocence, their curiosity, they're the same everywhere, whether you're in America, the UK, or Malawi. Children are children. They do the same things. They laugh the same way. They interact with each other similar. So I always would tell people that I would run into that may have another different perspective. They're maybe not as optimistic. And I said, it's if we just focus more on what makes us similar rather than what makes us different, I think we have a lot better. So between those two things is looking at what's right and not wrong about the world, and looking at what makes us the same can help us come together. And that will also give you that perspective that, we're not blind to the fact there's poverty, there are people dying of AIDS, there are, serious human rights abuses, what the way women are treated in Uganda, for example. It's horrific to hear that. So there's certainly realities, but you have to look at what's positive, and that will give you the energy to maybe help and impact change.
Last question, quick one. The tagline for my blog is "Believe in yourself and nothing is impossible." I kind of have an idea of what your answer is going to be, but do you believe that is true?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question that if you do believe in yourself, and as I say sometimes, trust yourself, trust that instinct, anything is possible. And another thing that I say, which is why I gravitated to your blog and to your and finding you on Twitter, is the concept of possibilities. We hear that word. What does that mean? And possibilities, I do believe, are endless. So I always say that, to realize the possibilities, you have to be open to the possibilities. And to be open to the possibilities, you need to see the possibilities. And to see the possibilities requires you to, believe in those possibilities. Because if you can't see them, you don't know it. So you can do whatever you want. If you can visual. Let's go back to that visual. If you can see it, you can do it. If you can dream it, you can do it. And believe in yourself and trust yourself.
Allan, thank you so much. Totally amazing, inspiring, and good advice. I hope to speak to you again sometime as well.